So I'm going to read a couple silly things just to have some fun here, to maybe cleanse your scientific palate in between the more significant speeches that are going to be happening. So enjoy. My name is George Hrab. I'm from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I'm a musician by trade and a podcaster as well. And this is just some of my thoughts. Years ago, I watched an interview with George Michael of Wham fame. And yes, you always include the exclamation point, Wham! Wherein he talked about how he's not a narcissist because he's always checking himself out in the mirror. He says he's actually the opposite of a narcissist because he's always checking himself out in a mirror. His logic was that true narcissists would never need to look at their reflections because they would just intrinsically know that they looked all neon-y fabulous. Confirming their Breckalicious appearance in a mirror would be unnecessary and superfluous. Excuse me. Mr. Michael's actual opinion of himself, however, is so low that he needs to constantly be checking any and all reflective surfaces to confirm that everything is in its perfectly coiffed and 5 o'clock shadowed place before he wakes up anyone for any reason, let alone before go-going. At the time, this made me think, this makes a weird bit of sense. But it also made me think, what's the difference? If narcissists are known to look at themselves in the mirror, and that's what you do, who cares about the motivation, right? A person's actions are often what helps determine how an individual is perceived, and the motivation of said action is rarely considered, at least initially, when determining the intrinsic character of an individual. For example, someone runs through a freshly red light, thereby endangering other motorists. Selfish prick, right? There's no way that most people's initial thought is, wow, they must have a really fantastic reason for speeding like that. I hope everyone's okay. There could be 1,000 legitimate or at least defensible reasons that someone would motor through a red light. Maybe a husband's wife is in labor. Maybe someone is delivering a kidney to a hospital. Maybe the first episode of season 4 of Sherlock is starting in 2 minutes. Whatever. There's an incredible likely chance that the person is just an unsafe prick, but there's no guarantee. Regardless, an individual is putting lives at risk by driving unsafely, which then raises the question, does motivation matter? Let's put it this way. Folks that know me personally and even indirectly would think of me as pretty fastidious. I've opened my house many times to guests, and I think that for the most part, the impression that people get from visiting my place is not one that results in them nervously smiling and slowly walking backwards while trying to find the website that tells you how to apply for the show Hoarding Nightmares Cat Intervention. I think both my personal appearance as well as the upkeep of my place makes most folks assume that I'm a relatively neat individual. But here's the thing, I really do think of myself as a messy person. I know that left to my nature and unchecked, I would quickly and easily be engulfed by a piled assemblage of laundry, pizza boxes, and copies of Entertainment Weekly and Wired so impressive that it would force Frank Gehry to reconsider his career. There have been concealed corners in my house that over the years have existed as hidden repositories of clutter so secret that even Bluebeard himself once told me to just chill. I inherently know this about myself, so I work diligently to not have the mess and disarray become so prominent that it not only becomes sentient, but asks to seek the creator. I thereby forge an environment and practice that ensures that I clean up often, everything has its place, and certain maintenance rules are enforced and followed. For example, here's one. You are one person. If there is more than one mug sitting in the sink, and you have not just hosted the ladies from The View for coffee, clean the damn mugs. This then naturally makes me come across like Niles Crane, and I'm totally okay with that. But it begs the question, which am I? Am I a neat person just being neat, or a messy person who has successfully devised a way to appear neat? And does it matter? If an inherently nervous and anxious person constantly prepares themselves for any contingency and subsequently comes across as completely prepared and confident, are they nervous or confident? I tend to mumble like Bob Dylan with tetanus, but when I have to make announcements with a microphone, I speak more clearly than NASA engineers telling Apollo 13 how to construct a CO2 scrubber using a sweat sock. So am I a mumbler or not? Which then, of course, makes you think, are people that are unpleasant people because of some legitimate motivation? Does the guy running the red light have a decent reason? I admit there have been times I've bent the rules of motoring when I need to have them bend to my advantage. But subsequently, whenever I experience someone being vehicularly churlish, I try to imagine that their actions are being motivated by a set of circumstances that makes their behavior as justified as mine might have been. It actually makes it easier to yield and merge. Seriously. I'm well aware there's no real answer to my query, and that perception and motivation are just all curious ingredients in our own personality salads. I just hope that you'll enjoy the stuff that I'm addressing. Thank you.
Some more, I get some from the hall for you.
What's that?
If you want more water, I'll get some for you.
That'd be lovely, actually. Thank you. Just don't walk in front of the camera. 9 stupid things in your car ranked by how stupid they are. Number 9, cigarette lighter. Do you need to drive your car someplace specific, like 1978? Squat, perfectly done. Nicely done, sir. Great! Here's a device to help make sure your children get contact cancer while also providing a red-hot metal lipstick tube with which to ignite your vehicle's upholstery. Wait, you don't smoke and you live in the 21st century? Well then, do you like to use devices that require electricity? Awesome. I'm just going to need you to buy half a dozen of these dongle-based converters that somehow allow Eisenhower-era technology to convert a thermal coil into something that charges your goddamn iPhone. Why have a regular outlet when you can have a mini cattle branding device? Stupid item. Number 8, rear window defroster. Hi, I'd like the back of my car to look like something that was rejected from the initial design concepts for the movie Logan's Run for looking too cheesy sci-fi. Can I get that? Or maybe you could interweave the glass of said rear viewport with a few thin strips of repeating metal so that I can jot down any symphonic ideas I might have while waiting for my windows to defog. Nicely done. Oh, and can said manuscript lines have just enough juice flowing through so as to not only clear the immediate space next to them, thereby ensuring that any view I may have resembles what LeVar Burton had to gaze through for 7 seasons on The Next Generation. Thank you, stupid item. Number 7, emergency brake. Of all the things your panicked hands will be doing during an actual vehicle-based emergency, yanking on the lever next to your thigh is not one of them. Trust me, the handbrake in your car is designed to do one of 2 things. 1, be accidentally left engaged while driving so that you can learn what a Bolivian trash fire smells like. Or 2, subtly catch the straps of whatever hand, grocery, or duffel bags you may have lying in the passenger seat, thereby ensuring that your attempt to exit the car, retrieve your items, and get on with your frickin' life, and after having been to the market, quickly resembles the 3rd reel of a Monsieur Hulot film. The handbrake will also be amongst the first things in your car to get stuck in the on position. It will never ever be used in an emergency. Stupid item. Number 6, interior visor. There are not many things looser and more poorly placed than Kanye West's own self of moral superiority, but your car's interior visor is one of them. 2 of them, actually. These are, in essence, flapping mini doors to nowhere. Regardless where the sun's blinding rays may be streaming, there's one small sliver of non-visor area openness that allows the sun to shine directly in your face, and it'll be sure to line up with your vision perfectly. This device guarantees that your forehead has shade while your eyes are on fire. Are you driving with the sun on your left? Excellent. Pretend that the top ledge of your windshield has suddenly become a 19th century saloon door and swing that stupid flap over to the side so that while you don't actually block the light from burning out your corneas, at least you get to limit the visibility from your side window by 30%. Is that an 18-wheeled semi about to T-bone us? Could be, don't know. At least the visor is protecting my right shoulder from glare. Stupid item. Number 5, sunroof/moonroof. Okay. First off, when the hell did it become a moonroof? Moonroof? Really? Fine. Boo. And also, by the way, a window is not a roof. It should be a sun window or a moon window. And then when the damn thing is retracted, it's especially not a sunroof. It's a sun hole. If it was called that, that might be almost okay. Does this car come with a sun hole? No. Oh, it comes with a moon hole? Even better. I'll take 3. A car's sunroof is the equivalent of a diet convertible. It's all the must hair with none of the coolness. Some sunroofs allow the front edge to be slightly tipped up so that all the air you're driving in can swoosh in and make sure the receipt you were saving for your next audit gets blown out the window and left in the turnpike. while other sunroofs can have the back edge slightly tipped up, ensuring that the overwhelming wind sound makes it all but impossible to converse with any family members. Moonroof, stupid item. Number 4, AM radio. Are you in the mood for the audio equivalent of a patently false piece of news posted on Facebook? Would you like to hear a list of the surefire signs that Jesus is not only judging you, but coming back any second while riding a flaming chariot made out of the bones of Bin Laden's chiropodist? Do you wish there was a way you could hear about current events 22 minutes at a time, all while the sound of a fake teletype clacks away in the background? Do you enjoy hearing poorly recorded songs in the public domain? Do you wish there was a button on the dashboard of your car that would allow instant access to the trove of barely regulated, easily interfered with, unclear monaural audio? Of course not. You're not Joe Franklin. Stupid item. Number 3, cup holder. The last thing you're going to store in your car's cup holder is a stupid cup. This is designed to keep straw wrappers, pens, phone chargers, receipts, and pennies off your vehicle's floor, and it barely does that. Some cup holders are permanently housed in a mini hump, which provides a convenient ledge for your credit card to slide off of, ensuring that the only way you can retrieve it from between your seats is by dismantling the car's drivetrain. Plus, the ever-expanding caloric and hydrogenous requirements of the American consumer have also ensured that in the rare event you actually do want to use your cup holder, to hold a cup, the girth of the latest Thirst Bomb stomach glugger from the Quick Fix Market and Shop will not fix inside its humble diameter. Your car's cup holder is also designed to be impossible to fully clean so that it's a convenient repository for both dried hot sauce and Staphylococcus. Stupid item. Number 2, check engine light. If there's ever been a more amorphous and non-specific indicating device than a car's check engine light, I surely can't think of one. You may as well have a crisis in Middle East imminent light on your dash for all the Prussian good it'll do you. Maybe having a check to see if time is still running forward light would be a good idea. I hear that the new Tesla is going to have a check ego at the door light. And every Fiat will soon be incorporating a check yourself before you wreck yourself light. The check engine light might as well just illuminate and say, time to give mechanic money. I mean, shit, they're going to find something to fix on your damn car. You've had it for 5 months already. Whenever my check engine light comes on, I open the hood, peer inside, and say, yep, still there. Then I close it and I drive to New Jersey feeling satisfied. Stupid item. And the number 1 stupid thing in your car, ranked by how stupid they are, passenger side rear view mirror. Objects are closer than they appear? Objects are closer than they appear? What the hell is that about? Who cares about the apparent intimacy of the items I'm looking at? It's none of my business. I just don't want to accidentally sideswipe the hand-painted shopping cart of that insane cat lady on 5th and Houston. But seriously, why is there one piece of safety equipment on my vehicle whose design is based on the 4th least popular items in a wacky shack? My car doesn't have a ball pit or a bumpy ride, so who the hell determined a funhouse mirror was de rigueur? Oh sure, it allows a greater field of view, you say. Well, so would having the entire car made out of plexiglass, but no one's advocating that. And if it makes so much sense, why is there a warning written on the glass? What well-designed item requires a written warning on it? Imagine if the hood of your car said, warning, contents hot. Or printed on your driver's seat, it said, warning, this will chap your ass. Does the door to your house say, warning, boring people inside? No, of course not, but it may be true, but there's no need to overpress the point. And by the way, passengers sitting in my car, lean the fuck back when I need to get to an intersection, okay? Stupid item. Recently on my podcast talked about how difficult it is to write last episodes of shows and how expectations are usually very high. And there's not too many examples of really excellent final shows. And there's a couple. My favorite of all time was Star Trek: The Next Generation. The All Good Things. So I ended up writing this, and this is just because it's kind of time sensitive. I figured I'd read this for you. So, one of my all-time favorite final series episodes is the grand finale to Star Trek: The Next Generation. In that series ending, our beloved Captain P is tasked by the ever-naughty Q to figure out how a pan-dimensional space anomaly has somehow managed to wipe out all of humanity. Q causes the captain to travel back and forth between multiple points in time so that this 2-hour special show jumps in and out between the current time, which is season 7 of the series, more than 25 years forward in the future, 2 weeks before the start of season 1, or just before the pilot episode, and something like 4 billion years into the past. Picard just instantly zips between all of these timelines, sometimes mid-sentence, and the poor, sexy schlub has to keep track of where the hell he is, when the hell he is, and what the hell is going on with this anomalous space thingy. Just to add to the fun, Jean-Luc is also diagnosed with a rare brain disorder, so the rest of the crew thinks he's suffering from some version of space Alzheimer's and have a tough time believing what he's saying. The beauty of this episode is manifold, but I loved that it incorporated previous cast members, a non-bearded Riker, gave us a glimpse of what happens to these characters in the future, but also allowed that all of this was just a possibility of what might happen, thereby not constraining the characters to a narrative arc that may need to be retrofitted at some point. To add to the collective coolness of the finale, it's revealed that the entire Next Gen series has been part of an, unbeknownst to us, ongoing trial that started in the pilot episode, overseen by the persnickety Q. In that first show, Q puts humanity on trial for being savages, and Picard convinces himself to spare the human race because it has such potential for good. We think that a verdict is given by Q to spare humanity, but it turns out to only be provisional. And the Q Continuum has been watching our Star Trekkers all this time. The real verdict, and subsequently the fate of humanity, rests with Picard figuring out this final challenge, thereby tying the entire series together. It's some pretty damn genius writing. Anyway, the plot is resolved due to the fact that a thing that Picard does 25 years in the future, emitting some techie talk particles into a time anomaly, causes said anomaly to grow larger and larger, but backwards through time, until it grows so big it prevents life from forming on the Earth, or something. Regardless, Picard figures it out because Jean-Luc. And all is right with the Star Trek universe until the crew of Discovery has those weird collars. Point being, little did I know when I spoke about this particular finale on my podcast that this week is literally the 25th anniversary of that final episode's airing. The show was first broadcast on May 23rd, 1994. What's doubly bananas is in that episode, Geordie LaForge, played by the bibliophilic LeVar Burton, mentions to the captain that it's been 25 years since the Enterprise days, placing the time of that future timeline in place with exactly today, but in the future, but assuming that the show had continued, even though it didn't continue, but if it had sort of kind of in a way, future, I need to sit down for a second, sorry. Okay, so on that day in 1994, I invited a number of friends over to watch said series finale, and it was really this wonderful shared experience. We had a bunch of pizza and yummies, and we sat wide-eyed and wistful as we watched the final television adventure written for this particular crew. Holy crap, did we scream and howl as a future retrofitted 1701D with a third goddamn nacelle engine flew into frame from below an attacking Klingon vessel at 90 degrees angle, subsequently blowing the living kapla out of that never-saw-it-coming ship. This was the first time in history of the series that the horizontal plane was broken by two dueling starships. Why this didn't happen all the time was beyond us, but hot damn, it was so awesome. Keeping in mind this was 25 years ago with an incredibly gestational internet, AOL chat room, anybody? There was no online community to share the experience with in the moment. There was the 12 of us or so screaming like BTS fans all in real time. I don't think I've ever done something similar to that since, at least not with a decent-sized group of people like that. The fact that this all occurred 25 years ago in some ways was quite astounding to me, and in others it seems just about right. Here we are now, waiting for a brand new Star Trek show featuring Jean-Luc Picard, who incidentally looks better now than he looked with the aging makeup that they put on him to make him look the age he is now back then when he was younger, but they were aging him to be 25 years, and I need to sit down again, I'm sorry. Let me just say that if you're unfamiliar with the final episode of Next Generation, it's titled All Good Things, be sure to check it out. Spoilers, I guess? It can be argued that it's better than a number of the Next Gen films, which is really something for a television show from the 90s to pull off. Here's to hoping the next 25 years will be full of long life and prospering. Did folks watch the last episode as it aired? Oh yeah, I love it. My people.
VHS.
My people. Seriously, that thing came up and it was like, ah, this is so cool, this is so great. Lovely. All right, moving on. Poetry is easy. If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that a parking space won't magically appear on the first floor of the parking garage if you take an extra loop around the entire structure. Either that space is there when you pass it the first time, or it ain't. Gospel. If there's two things I've learned over the years, it's the crap about the parking, and that poetry is easy. Like super easy. Really, here, I'll teach you. Did you know that some poetry doesn't even have to rhyme? I know, it's crazy, right? And yet many poet scholars, or scholettes, totally think that those poems are legit. But wait, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Let's first talk about the kinds of poetry that exist, at least in the English language, because that's the only language that really counts. So there are essentially 4 types of poetry: guanine, adenine, thymine, and cytosine. No, wait, sorry, I had the wrong tab open on my computer. The 4 types of poetry are rhyming, non-rhyming, confusing old kind, and limerick. The other 4 things I mentioned are actually the Kardashians' nieces and nephews. Sorry, anyway, let's break down these 4 styles of poetry and come up with some kick-ass examples. Rhyming. In rhyming poetry, the word at the end of a line has to rhyme with another word that usually is at the end of a line as well. Sometimes the words aren't at the end of consecutive lines, and sometimes the words that rhyme are in the middle of the sentence, or maybe they're crammed in because some other words that definitely don't rhyme with it. The rhyming words, however, are always at least in the room somewhere, secretly judging the other words that insist on not rhyming with each other. There are different types of rhyming sequences, usually indicated by the letters A, B, C, etc. Oddly enough, those letters don't rhyme with each other, but that's okay. Take this simple poem as an example. See that girl, watch that scene, dig in the dancing queen, now I hurl. If girl and hurl are considered to be the A rhyme, and scene and queen are the B rhyme, the rhythmic sequence of that particular poem would be A, B, B, A. See how easy it is? Even a Scandinavian wearing a space sequin dance onesie with flared pants can do it. Types of rhyming poetry include Hallmark cards, Burger King commercials, hip hop, old churchy stuff, wedding vows non-denominational, Dan Brown plot clues, gravestones, Don King interviews, children's cooking instructions, jury tampering, etc. Non-rhyming. This is the really easy part. Non-rhyming poetry allows you to do and say whatever the hell you want. With this second type of poetry, it's pretty much like the US Constitution. Anything goes. As opposed to that Cole Porter song, I Happen to Like New York. A little less than about 100 years ago, poets got sick of the constraints of making shit rhyme, so they just started finishing the lines of their poems with whatever the heck was easiest. There's no rhyming sequence to these poems because duh. Take for example this poem. I ate pears the other day. They were delicious. Oh crap, the cable bill is due. Sometimes poets who write non-rhyming poetry will purposely use language in ways that allow the meaning of words to be more fluid and less literal, or they'll just like the way certain words sound so they can use them as tiny pieces of sonic sculpture. This laziness is sometimes called being creative and original, but it usually leads to starvation and reliance on girlfriends. Here's a quick example of some non-literal and fluid poetry. Caustic morals lead to Cumberbatch acting. Meticulous zucchini knows the apoplectic pan of destiny. But wait, is it a tizzy of dystopian misanthropy? Yeah, sure, why not? See how easy it is? That took like 30 seconds. Frost metal, please. Types of non-rhyming poetry include beat poems, shopping lists, haiku, concession speeches, excuses of your 4-year-olds caught drawing on the cat with magic marker, overpass graffiti, Yoda advice, Wells Fargo banking spiel while on hold, State of the Union, Oscar acceptances, jury tampering, etc. Confusing old kind. This type of poetry sort of rhymes, but it often uses words that are stupid old and that were once pronounced differently by people wearing cod pieces and farthingales or some shit. One super popular thing that occurs in a lot of confusing old kind of poetry is something called iambic pentameter. Iambic pentameter is essentially a way to make it really difficult to write the lines of a poem that, if done successfully, no one will notice anyway. It's a thing where each line has 10 syllables, and you stress all the uneven numbered syllables, and you make sure that it ends with a really cracking good final syllable because Queen Elizabeth. For example, dun dun, dun dun, dun dun, dun dun, dun dun. These lines don't have to rhyme with each other, but sometimes they do, especially at the end, because who doesn't like a big finish? Here, let me try one. To write a poem takes quite a strength of will. Some make attempts and fail with every try. But these poor souls, alas, continue still. I pray that Shakespeare reference didn't slip by. These are much tougher to write than the bullshit thing about eating pears, but oddly enough, they're way less likely to make an impression on anyone. Go figure. Types of confusing old poetry include sonnets, ballads, elegies, epitaph, pastoral, quatrains, inane, night train, odes, narratives, cough syrup instructions, heroin-based fever dreams, jury tampering, etc. Finally, we get to limerick. Limericks are the most fun kinds of poems because the most famous limerick ever involves a description of someone's enormous genitalia. That means that even if you're not reciting that particular limerick, everyone is still thinking about it, what makes it kind of awesome. I mean, what other type of art form instantly makes everyone think of a huge schlong somewhere up in the northeast part of the USA? I mean, apart from Carpathian hand looming, of course. Limericks were first made popular in the Irish city of Cork. Limericks definitely rhyme, and they have a rhyming scheme of AABBA, with the BB sections having half the rhythmic density of the AA sections, and the punchline being delivered with the final A. This is essential. If you're going to attempt to write a limerick, don't give away the punchline with the first A. For example, by setting up camp in your prick, evolution's quite a trick. It can develop fish that'll do what they wish, and to its guns they will stick. Is not nearly as breathtakingly hilarious as evolution's quite a trick, and to its guns it will stick. It can develop fish that'll do what they wish, like set up camp in your prick. If you can get either Carl Castle or Bill Curtis to read your limerick, all the better. Limericks are great for all occasions, but are best when there are young children in the room. Type of limericks include, well, limericks. I hope with this easy primer, you'll now all be able to start writing your own pieces, and you will no longer feel intimidated by poetry, poets, free verse, or that one sales clerk at the Jiffy Lube. Keep in mind that there's a huge difference between verses, ES, and verses, US, and be sure to dive right in and start writing poetry. Always remember, the universe is ultimately meaningless. In the timeless actual words of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, write to me and don't be so lazy. Otherwise, I shall have to give you a thrashing. What fun, I'll break your head. Actual quote. As some of you may or may not know, I play drums for a living. Yep, I'm a working percussivist. So invariably, my friends and some fans of mine love to send me links to articles about how smart drummers are. It's almost like folks are trying to tell me something. Apparently, there's been a number of studies done on musicians, drummers in particular, that shows that the way a percussoid-keen individual organizes and accesses data is extremely efficient and different from how non-sticking, spin-sticking humans organize and access data. I'm still trying to figure out how in the name of Buddy Rich's wig valet they managed to fit a drum set inside of an MRI machine. But that's a question whose answer will have to wait. I have been sent link after HTTP'd link to numerous analyses, all saying the same essential thing. Drummer no dum-dum. I like these articles, but I'm just a tiny bit insulted by them. Teeny tiny, I promise. Okay, I know plenty of drummers that are morons. I also know plenty of non-drummers that are morons, but that goes without saying. There is a weirdly subtle, good for you, you used the correct side of your spoon to eat all of your ice cream, yay, vibe that goes with some of these stories. Even the titles reflect a, holy shit, turns out the guy with the drumsticks is not a complete imbecile, can you believe it? Kind of message, which I understand. Still hurts a little bit though. I'm curious about the perceived cliche of the dumb drummer. Who was the first famous dumb drummer? Was it some bewigged character on an early episode of Dragnet 67? Was it the jazz bow bongo cats that Maynard Krebs was making fun of? Was it Ringo with his I'm just happy to be here attitude? Was it the insanely inebriated on horse tranquilizers Keith Moon diving into an empty pool with no water? Was it Animal on the Muppets? Or is it just that artists and musicians have always been seen as different and weird, and drummers that are thought of as most different and weird means dumb, and there you go? Or is it some vast cultural ignorance associating the concept of, well, drummers just hit stuff, anyone can do that. It's not like playing a saxophone or something. Which reminds me, for a brief period of time, I worked at a clothing store selling business casual suits to men who had no idea what that meant and just wanted the goddamn pleats on their trousers back. Anyway, one day an older gentleman was shopping for ties or some other thing, and we somehow got on the topic of my education. He was astounded that not only did I study music in college, but that my instrument was drums. I can remember distinctly the incredulous look on his face, accompanied by the motion of what appeared to be him trying to simultaneously jack off two invisible giraffes. This was what playing a drum looked like to him. This guy also insisted on asking incredibly, drumming, what's there to study? He also didn't buy anything, and he's probably dead now. I realize that these scientific studies are confirming something I and most non-invisible giraffe-pleasuring humans understand, but I wonder how well other cliche-busting studies would be received. Science shows pizza chefs may actually respect their wives. New study reveals bankers have free time Saturday morning. DNA scan shows husbands innocently leave toilet seats up without agenda. How the brain reveals that not every priest fantasizes about little peeners. That's my favorite. Scientists reveal women are just as irrational as men in certain circumstances. Latest fMRI scan proves white guys dance like this, etc. It is fascinating to see how the brain works when improvisers are improvising, comedians are comedying, and musicians are musicifying. All the different systems of the brain lighting up in the hippocampal equivalent of the Bellagio fountains is really something to observe. The mere fact we can watch the subtle systemic interplay of all the brain's intricacies fascinates me to no end. And even though I'm glad that all of these studies are showing that we drummers are just as smart, nay, in certain ways smarter, as average folk, I wish the reaction would be more like, well, duh, as opposed to, good for you, ah, well. How you doing? Okay. 10 stupid desserts ranked by how stupid they are. Number 10, rice pudding. Here's an idea. Would you like a gray, viscous mound that could possibly contain 850 clumps of Ebola in it? Is the thought of a smooth, creamy pudding too daunting to conceptualize and causing your ankles to swell? Are you longing for a barely sweet treat that is somehow manufactured out of the world's most savory grain? You are? Well, what the hell's crawled up your tushy, Dieter? Rice pudding has the honor of being the only dessert you can somehow fabricate out of the remnants lying around in a Chow's Dragon Smiley Panda #1 box at the rear bottom of the back shelf of your fridge. After you finish your rice pudding, how about having some Szechuan chicken a la mode? Stupid dessert. Number 9, pavlova. I know the thing I want to be reminded of while eating dessert is some turn-of-the-century salivary experiment performed by a bell-wielding Russian asshole on his collection of Akita Malamutes. Delicious, yeah. Now look, I know it's not named after that guy, but it is named after a famous ballerina, which is another image I want in my brain while enjoying a bathtub full of meringue. Does that taste good? Enjoy. And by the way, you know that Anna Pavlova weighed 15 pounds when this dessert was named after her, and she consumed her portion solely by licking the outside of the bowl while smoking 2.5 packs of Gauloise, right? Now put those damn toe shoes back on. Stupid dessert. Number 8, creme brulee. Ever wondered what it would feel like to eat a pudding covered by a piece of glass? Well, wonder no more. Here's a mortar of treacle covered by what looks like an aborted first attempt at some kind of Sistine window. And by the way, you know what I love? Burnt things. Not toasted, not warm, not crisp, burnt. Especially burnt sugar. You really have to appreciate a chemical cooking process that can bridge the gap between delicious and toxic in under 3 seconds. Let me see if I can chew through a filling or two because Monsieur Torre wants to jack off one of his newly purchased blowtorches. And speaking of, as soon as your dessert requires a Home Depot gift card in order to complete it, you've crossed the line, stupid dessert. Number 7, black forest cake. There's nothing like a cake to remind you of the plight of Jewish partisans hiding in the woods for most of the durations of World War II. You might as well call this dish a Belsky brick for all the enjoyment you like to engender. Let's see, I've created a tasty cake that's full of chocolatey goodness and cherry flavor. I shall name it after a region in Germany known for glass making, charcoal burning, and potash mining. Potash! Sure, some claim it's named after the tart cherry liqueur that's distilled in the mountain ranges of southwestern Germany, but I guarantee, if you walk into a bakery and yell, Schwarzwälder Kirschwasser, at the top of your lungs, the last thing you're likely to get served while being brought up before the world court is a piece of cake. Stupid dessert. Number 6, key lime pie. What's the most tart thing in the universe? Who gives a shit? Just add more sugar. By the way, whenever you eat a key lime pie and enjoy its buttery, crunchy crust, I hope you remember that the guy that invented the graham cracker wrote the book On Self-Pollution, which basically started and cemented the patently false concept that masturbation is something illicit, evil, and dangerous to children. That's right, add some more whipped cream and dig in. The key lime pie has also somehow monopolized the idea that it's something you equate with and think about during the warm spring and summer months, much like the shame associated with your back hair. But hey, any food that's both pale green and mucilaginous can't be all bad, right? Stupid dessert. Number 5, tiramisu. Have you ever wondered how drunk 10-year-olds would behave at Nana's wake? Yes? Well, then be sure to make yourself a nice tiramisu and drench that fucker in Di Serono. Hats off to any dessert that requires a breathalyzer after ingestion. Speaking of which, if you ever came across a woman who had actual fingers that looked like lady fingers, you'd instantly be on your phone Googling for both an orthopedic surgeon and an exorcist. You also have to appreciate the fact that the most inherently Italian dessert you can think of sounds like it's been named after one of the katana-swinging secondary characters in the novel Shogun. Hype! Stupid dessert. Number 4, baklava. Crumbs. So many crumbs. Like serious crumbs. More crumbs than a Haight-Ashbury pop art gallery in 1973. Between the phyllo and the nuts, you'll be wearing the dessert for the rest of the afternoon, if not the week. And by the way, phyllo dough, F-I-L-O dough, are we just making up words and pronunciations now? At least give me a PH to make me think of the inventor of television. Baklava originates from the Ottoman Empire, which makes sense when you realize that there was an entire culture based on propping up one's feet. Who gives a Turkish shit if there's crumbs on my surprisingly pointing beard? I'm chillaxing. One last thing just for clarity. You rob a bank wearing a balaclava, not a baklava. That's the last time I make that mistake. Number 3, bananas Foster. Oh great, more fire. Just what I want at the end of my meal. Yes, Mr. Waiterman, signal the maitre d' to please lower the lights so I can really understand why this dessert costs 12 times more than chocolate cake. If you could play either the saber dance or some royalty-free version of Hot, Hot, Hot while you torch the equivalent of what I had on my cornflakes this morning, that would really make my night complete, thank you. I also appreciate that the name of this particular sugar inferno brings to mind not only children stuck in the hellish bureaucracy of adoption, but also the antiquated routines of a 1970s comic who puckishly celebrated cirrhosis and alcoholism. Stupid dessert. Number 2, bread pudding. Have you been recently caught after having committed some kind of very specific crime whose subsequent penalties requires execution by carbohydrate? You have? Well, guess what? I have the equivalent of death row, but in a ramekin. Let's take 2 years worth of gluten and soak it in custard before dousing it in caramel and drenching it in the tears of Archangel Gabriel. Then we'll serve it with ice cream, just to sweeten it up a little bit. Holy shit, is this a stupidly dense dessert. This dessert is so dense, you can use it as insulation at the Large Hadron Collider. This dessert is so dense, it could be used to solve Venice's flooding problem. This dessert is so dense, it actually stared at a carton of orange juice for 20 minutes because it said concentrate. This dessert is so dense, it would volunteer to be 45's press secretary. This is one dense dessert, and it's a stupid dessert. And the number 1 stupid dessert ranked by how stupid it is, chocolate brownie sundae. The chocolate brownie sundae is the weekend Pee Wee League football coach finally putting in the kid with the glaucoma glasses, 1 orthopedic shoe, and a modified baseball helmet in the game, but only after his team is winning 105-3. If there was the dessert equivalent of a Sears portrait studio, it would be the chocolate brownie sundae. If a Friday night open mic featuring songs, poetry, and baton twirling could somehow be served at the end of a meal, it would be the chocolate brownie sundae. If a Plymouth Reliant, occupied by 4 accountants looking for a slightly closer parking space in the Mall of America, could miraculously transmogrify itself into a cloying sweet concoction of mediocrity, it would unquestionably turn into a chocolate brownie sundae. The chocolate brownie sundae is every portly, middle-aged sitcom husband whose wife is way too stunningly smart, beautiful, and vivacious. The chocolate brownie sundae is a twist contest comprised solely of pro-Brexit voters and people that know all the words to Brandy, You're a Fine Girl. The chocolate brownie sundae is the stupidest dessert. This list is final and non-negotiable. And I would eat any of them in a second, just to make that clear. Those are jokes. I love them all too much. How we doing here? What do we got? We good? We're all good? We're all good so far? All right. I have never marched with Nazis. Let me say that again to be perfectly clear. I have never marched with Nazis. Not once ever. The closest I ever came to marching with Nazis was sitting in my 3rd grade Ukrainian school class, wherein I was convinced that Mrs. Borovic was somehow actually Joseph Mengele. They both had the same general vibe and mustache. I just knew that he had a monstrous secret that somehow resulted in her teaching the 3rd grade homeroom at St. John's Ukrainian Catholic Parish in Newark, New Jersey. If the History Channel had been around then, they would have had that guy with the crazy pencil troll hair talking about the very plausible story of how the Third Reich's torturing and torturous doctor came to be in charge of teaching noun declension, penmanship, and Eastern European geography to a set of prepubescent Ukrainian grade schoolers, all with whizzy reenactments and mildly dated-looking graphics. This show would be on right after the one with the a-holes who can't find any gold. Or the other show with the a-holes who can't find any gold. Or maybe the other one with the other a-holes who can't find Sasquatch. Or possibly the one after that with a completely different set of assholes that insist on repeatedly finding nothing on Oak Island. By the way, Seinfeld was not a show about nothing. The Curse of Oak Island is a show about nothing. Seriously, 5 seasons worth. I've marched with my scouting group. I've marched before a soccer game. I've marched to the beat of a different drummer. I've even listed March as my favorite month, but I have never marched with Nazis. I have, however, danced the tango with people that judge others based on the number of pleats they have on their pants. I have crab walked with folks that refuse to give a straight answer when asked paper or plastic. I have limboed under a stick that was once used to discipline 2 gentlemen who were running a fixed cockfight. I have skipped to my lewd with a number of individuals who smoke, resulting in an impressive hacking sound emanating from all of them. I have slogged with persons that don't ever park in handicapped spots but are always tempted. I have moseyed with large groups of fans attending a Yes concert solely as a token symbol of their appreciation of the band's legacy. I have sashayed with drinkers of Pepsi White, Japan's leading yogurt-flavored soft drink. I have hiked with one individual that knew all the words to Country Road Take Me Home in Esperanto. I have wandered through TSA checks with passengers that were carrying more than 3 ounces of salsa on their persons. I have pirouetted with a trio of vegans, each wearing a beef It's What's for Dinner t-shirt. I have even reenacted the crowded cabin scene from A Night at the Opera with some retired EMTs, but I have never marched with Nazis. As a matter of fact, if one were to create a list of the most unlikely things I'd ever do, marching with Nazis would be either at the very, very bottom of the list or at the very tippy top, depending on what kind of rubric this list was attempting to facilitate. You see, graded lists, assuming this would be a graded list, like top 10 or top 50 or bottom 2 or middle 389, well, you get it, can be tricky. The number one thing you're unlikely to do should be the most unlikely thing, right? But a thing you'll never do is less likely than the thing that is unlikely, because even though it's unlikely, it's still possible. Which asks the question, is something that's less possible than likely higher or lower on your list of unlikely possibilities? I don't know. What I do know is that I seem to have drifted here. I'm sorry. The point is, I've never marched with Nazis. I just want to make that very clear. I've never marched for a statue either. I'd have to have a pretty specific kind of statue for me to march for it, if that's even a thing, marching for statues. Which, by the way, is the best Radiohead album. There's a bust of Frank Zappa in Baltimore and also in Vilnius, Lithuania. You know what else is both in Vilnius and Lithuania? Varda's Kapelinai and Burger Cookie Emporium. 2 locations, Vilnius and Baltimore, that's it. The bust and Varda's. But regardless, that's something I'd march for. I'd march for the Frank Zappa bust. Not sure about Varda's. I'm not even sure what kind of monumentally specific circumstance would have to come up for me to decide to go march for a bust of Frank Zappa, but trust me, if something were to come up, I'd be there, so long as there were no Nazis. I mean, duh. I'll tell you, I'd march for reconstructed dinosaur bones. Hell yes, that's not really a statue, it's more of a sculpture. But regardless, I'd march for it. Again, we're talking about a pretty lugubriously specific set of circumstances, but you get my meaning. And by the way, trudging for Tridoon is what my handmade poster with marker skids and glued felt would say. What's a Tridoon, you ask? Well, a Tridoon was a relatively small dinosaur, about 6 feet tall, but he had a very large brain compared to his body. Some scientists think this was the smartest of all dinosaurs. Really? And get this, its eyes were large and they were slightly forward-facing, meaning this dude might have had some depth perception. Imagine that, a 6-foot-tall, forward-looking, smart dinosaur with depth perception. If that silly asteroid hadn't slammed into Chicxulub, maybe, just maybe, some version of a self-aware Tridoon would be speaking this to you right now, saying how he would never march with a Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus, by the way, is the dumbest of dinosaurs. 2-ton body, walnut-sized brain, Confederate flag somewhere in the garage. Anyway, march, me, Nazis, never. Let's see. I got time for 2 more, I think. This one's called Congratulations. Congratulations on purchasing your very own Fombast Series 8 Replicator Scrim. We at Fombast Industries strongly insist that you fully read all instructions, warnings, service recommendations, recipes, guarantees, apple trees, dirty knees, and last rites included in this operational manual. Failure to do so will automatically indemnify any and all employees of Fombast, Fombast Malaysia, Fombochem, Pan Pacific Steel Corporation, Globofo Limited, Paz Easter Egg Coloring Company, and all of the preclusive and exclusive subsidiaries of off-branch microentities included therein. The makers and distributor of the Fombast Series 8 Replicator Scrim will not recognize any second, third, or fourth party claims as may be tangentially related to injuries, malfunctions, boo-boos, hiccups, boners, dings, whiz-bats, or decapitations that may or may not be incurred through the disregarded, unregulated, and uninstantiated improper use of said mechanical device. Any and all queries, questions, disputes, slack-jawed looks of bewilderment, and or half-anxiously mumbled inquiries should be written in crayon on a 3x5 mauve index card and delivered in person to Ignore This, 187 Not Real Street, Gablomi, New Mexico, 178 Omega Pi. Packing and removal. Your Fombast Series 8 Replicator Scrim comes gussy wrapped in a pre-cycled polyglambist virtue straw, which should not be eaten even if you're super hungry. We can't express this strongly enough. Do not eat the stuff in the packaging. The box is okay, but not the virtue straw. Removing the Replicator Scrim from its incumbent packet instantly voids your warranty and is a simple process involving 1 bias meter, 2 lightning rods, half a yard of sellotape, and 3 properly grounded oven mitts. See Figure 27B. After removing the Replicator Scrim, you should immediately, 1, place the device onto a hard, flat, solid, well-ventilated cool, like temperature cool, not like Fonzie cool, partially hydrogenated surface. 2, take one of them Silkwood showers. 3, wait approximately 24 hours for the contents to settle, but no more than 24 hours and 2 minutes, seeing as the contents will automatically start to rejigger at this point. 4, proceed to first use and fire suppression. First use and fire suppression. First use of your Fombast Series 8 Replicator Scrim should be reserved for when you feel fully confident and comfortable in not only your general purpose in life, but in the general purposes and confidence levels of those most closely associated to your immediate family and coworkers, as well as those who may at one point been liable to any vehicular mismanagement you may have incidentally or accidentally been personally responsible for. Once this has been established, make sure that your pre-ordered Fombast Fire Suppression Matrix has been fully charged, turned on, placed within 6 inches of the Fombast Series 8 Replicator Scrim, and has its selector switch engaged to Go Boom position. If you have not yet purchased an approved and fully licensed Fombast Fire Suppression Matrix, do not switch on your Series 8 Replicator Scrim. Really, don't even point at the on switch just to be safe. Immediately go to fombombcom.com/fombomb and order the appropriate Fombast Fire Suppression Matrix for your unique distill zone and Chronos number. To determine your distill zone and Chronos number, see chart 345.1a. Using your Replicator Scrim. Using your Replicator Scrim is as easy as bolting a Norwich buckle to a rescinding valve joint. Note, This is hyperbole. Never bolt a Norwich buckle to a rescinding valve joint. Failure to recognize this as comedic hyperbole immediately voids any and all guarantees, warranties, covenants, assurances, implied pledges, printed promissory notes, underwritten vows, earnest securities, assurances, and pinky swears. No backsies. After all the preliminary and secondary joist planks have been deselected, make sure that the rotating Vim plunger is fully engaged and locked. You'll be able to tell that it's in the correct position if you hear 37 distinct audible clicks while it rotates into position. 38 clicks indicates that the Vim plunger is about to dislodge itself from the ancillary praxis and will likely explode if engaged. 36 clicks also means the Vim plunger is about to dislodge itself from the ancillary praxis and will likely explode if engaged. Count good. Once you hear the 38 distinct clicks, switch the global ticket plong to the VOOM position and move on to more usage of your replicander scrim. More usage of your replicander scrim. Since the mechanical efficiency of your replicander scrim correlates directly to the attitude at which the device is used, make sure the ZSAM intensity knob, or ZIK, is placed at the appropriate atmosphere pressurization point. To determine your proper ZIK setting, refer to diagram Beta Charlie 7. After properly pressurizing the unit, wait between 90 seconds and 12 hours for the ZIK Go indicator light to fully illuminate. The light will glow a distinct teal color when the unit is fully aggregated and instantiated. Do not use the unit if the ZIK Go indicator light is turquoise. This can lead to severe tire damage, injury, death, and swollen britches. Once the ZIK Go light is teal and not turquoise, you may depress the safety stopcock and begin using your Fonbass Series 8 replicander scrim. Final instruction. Be sure to always use your Fonbass Series 8 replicander scrim within a civilization whose number systems are primarily base 10 and in a well-lit area with a minimal spandex and broccoli rabe nearby. Failure to follow all of the preceding instructions may result in suboptimal performance for your unit, as well as from the Fonbass Series 8 replicander scrim. See what I did there? Ha ha ha, unit. Write manuals for a living, they said. It'll be steady work, they said. Well, guess what? Steady work can lead to insanity. Seriously, one more bit of techno-babble, zick-sick, replicaca shit, and I swear to Christ I'm gonna... We apologize for the disruption in the final instruction portion of our Fonbass Series 8 replicander scrim instruction manual. Rest assured, it won't happen again. Thank you for your purchase, and happy scrimming. And finally, I saw a dead body. Not a person prepared for a funeral service or TV footage of some victim of a natural disaster or some senseless act of violence. A just died, real, in-person, previously living, but now dead body. At one day away from my 45th birthday, I was surprised to realize this was the first time I had ever experienced something like that. It was a Tuesday morning. I had gotten up even sooner than I had been getting up recently in order to go meet Kiki for an early AM walk. As usual, we agreed to convene at our normal meeting spot located in between our two respective places, just a few blocks up the street from my condo. As I walked out of my apartment and crossed over in front of the parking spaces, I passed, as I always do, a series of benches that sometimes act as temporary refuge for a few transient members of the Bethlehem community. These folks like to sit and collect themselves and their belongings in this little tree-shaded glade, usually during the early morning and late evening hours. There aren't many homeless folks in town, or at least it's not a problem that seriously affects our community, but there are a few regulars that you quickly learn to recognize and even learn by name and character. You see them break up their days in any way they can, and while there's a certain sadness that one associates with observing them, there's actually an impressive amount of resilience, self-respect, and dignity that they possess. As I passed by the benches, I noticed a gentleman sleeping on one of them. As I mentioned, this is a regular spot for these folks, so the sight of someone sleeping would not normally be cause for surprise or interest. But my gaze was drawn to this particular individual because of the way he was laying. It really seemed awkward and unnatural. I've seen my fair share of passed out partygoers, and even though some of the positions that an inebriated person can occupy may appear quite uncomfortable, this twisted and contorted man looked particularly tense. He must have been about 60 years old and was bent and twisted to the side so that his cheek was pressing up against the side of the bench, and while his feet remained planted flat on the ground, he had a cane between his legs and appeared to be completely passed out. I was walking across the street when I noticed him, and initially was just looking to see if he was okay. I kept walking up the block and continued glancing over when it became apparent that his unwieldy position was at the very least a signal of distress. I saw Kiki off in the distance, and I motioned to her to come towards me so I could walk over and check on the man. During this brief time, another couple had walked out of the building, which is right in front of the bench, and began bending down and asking him if he was okay. There seemed to be little response, but seeing as I was still up the block, I couldn't hear if he was answering them. I motioned to the woman by placing my flattened hands, palms together by the side of my head, sort of asking, "Is he asleep?" She glanced back at me with a pained look and slowly shook her head. No. Kiki and I walked closer and quickly observed that the man's eyes were open while his cheek was pressing into the side of the bench. There was already a blueness to his face, and it was dawning on us that he was potentially gone. This was not a feeling I had ever quite experienced before. The man that had approached had his cell phone out and was speaking with what I presumed was the 911 operator. He was trying to give a description of the affected man and then pulled the phone away from his ear and asked the three of us, "Does anyone want to do CPR?" I had been a lifeguard all through high school and college and was certified in cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I know you need to lay the victim on their back, check for pulse and breathing, and then determine if CPR is appropriate. I know that if you decide CPR is necessary, you tell those around you to call for help. I know that you should tilt the head of the victim back, pinch their nose, blow in their mouth, giving 2 full breaths. I know that you open up the shirt, you place 2 fingers above the victim's xiphoid process, that little wishbone thingy in the center of your chest, to determine where compression should happen. And I know you're supposed to place the heel of your right hand in that spot and begin compressing by keeping your arm straight and pressing your 2 hands with fingers interlocked into the chest. I know you do these compressions 30 times, then stop and give another breath. I know you then repeat everything. I know you should try to compress to the beat of all things, staying alive. I know you're supposed to continue doing CPR until professional help arrives. I know all of these things. And I said nothing. That silence will stay with me for the rest of my life. The 3 of us looked at each other and just felt awkward. Apparently, the person on the other end of the 911 call was wondering why no one was doing anything. And the man speaking began defending us and trying to relay that it really seemed too late. We suddenly heard sirens off in the distance and realized that EMS and the police were seconds away. All of this took no more than 2 minutes, and I was once again greatly impressed with Bethlehem's emergency services. As the sirens' volume increased, there quickly appeared 3 police cars and a small fire engine. The police ran out, assessed what was happening, and pulled the man off the bench. They laid him flat on his back and attached 2 diodes from a self-diagnosing defibrillator pack. A woman's mechanized voice emitted from the red toolbox-sized package and said, "Processing, processing, no shock recommended." The cops removed the diodes and began manual CPR. Let me say one thing. We've all seen CPR done in the movies, and CPR in real life is nothing like it is in the movies. The chest gets so completely compressed, it's actually disturbing. It's such an invasive and violent action that seeing it added to the overall trauma of all the proceedings. Not another minute passed before an ambulance arrived and the crew from that vehicle took over. They put the victim onto a gurney and continued with CPR while placing him in the back of the ambulance. The police asked us some questions and tried to process what had just happened. The woman told the cops she had passed by the man not 20 minutes before and had said good morning to him. She was walking over to a coffee shop and had noticed him sitting peacefully when they exchanged pleasantries. She returned and then noticed that he had slumped over, just like that. I didn't recognize the man as one of the regulars. I didn't even know if he was homeless. He wasn't clean-shaven, but his clothes were sort of in tatters, and they were by no means very well kept. His shoes seemed loose, and they looked like they had no laces in them. I was struck by the fact, however, that he had a set of keys on his belt. Were these to his house or car? Were they just a token remnant of some previous life? Had he used them this morning, or did he hang on to them in hopes of someday he might need them again? What lives and loves and accomplishments and failures did those keys represent? It was a glorious day. The sky was perfectly cerulean, and all the heat and humidity from the past few days had dissipated into a freshly clean and crisp June morning. The sun was bright and showing off its limitless energy. There were no clouds in the sky, and this gentleman died. Maybe his final moment was perfect. Maybe he felt happy to get a hello from a passing stranger, took in one breath of the gorgeous day, and let his life leave amid sunshine and fresh air. Maybe it was the complete opposite. Maybe this was the culmination of bad luck and bad choices, and he left the world alone in pain on a bench. I don't know. I sincerely hope for the first option. Regardless, the incredible binary nature of existence was fully on display within the small span of this experience. We're alive, and then we're not. What I do know, however, was I was moved by the care and dignity that was displayed by the professionals taking care of him at the end. The cops could have very easily dismissed and waved off the old guy on the bench. The EMTs could have taken their time and not provided the focused attention they did. I know it's their job, but it was touching to see this all transpire in this stranger's final moments. I'd like to think that if the mayor had been found on the bench, the response would have been exactly the same, as it should. After it was all over, I realized the whole experience kind of represented our whole lot. We're all basically looking for a comfortable seat where we can exchange hellos with those that pass by, soak in the surroundings for a bit, go quickly, and be cared for at the end. With any luck, I guess. Make sure to say hello to a stranger today. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your attention. Stick around for Kenny Biddle. He's coming up. Thank you.